A 40-year buried secret. A millionaire female CEO thought she had everything under control until the past came knocking with a photograph, a plea for help, and a truth that shattered her heart. The child she abandoned now holds her fate in their hands. Margaret Maggie Reynolds, 62, is a successful CEO and the founder of Reynolds Beauty, a billion-dollar cosmetics empire headquartered in New York. With neatly trimmed silver hair and a confident demeanor, Maggie is a symbol of strength and independence, a woman who rose from poverty to stand at the pinnacle of the business world. She lives in a luxurious penthouse overlooking Central Park, where each evening she often sits by the large window, sipping a glass of red wine and gazing at the city twinkling with lights. It's a rare moment when she allows herself to relax, but also when old memories creep back. Those tough days in Brooklyn, growing up in a cramped apartment with her factory worker parents and 4 other siblings. Maggie never married, nor did she have children. At least, that's what everyone knew about her. Her career was everything, and she sacrificed much to reach where she is today. But there's a secret Maggie has kept buried for 40 years, one that even Ellen, her closest friend, a retired nurse with dyed blonde curls and a blunt personality, knows nothing about. When Maggie was 22, fresh out of community college and working part-time at a department store, she became pregnant. The father, a romantic but irresponsible young man named Paul, abandoned her as soon as he found out. Penniless and unsupported, Maggie made the hardest decision of her life, to give up her child right after birth for a chance to start over. She remembers that day in a rundown Brooklyn public hospital. The baby, a girl with big round eyes and soft curls, was placed in her arms for just a few minutes before a nurse took her away. An older nurse, with kind eyes and a warm voice, had asked, "Are you sure, sweetheart? This is a big decision." Maggie nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks, then turned and left the room without looking back. After that, she threw herself into work, studying at night, and slowly built Reynolds Beauty from a small flea market stall into a global brand beloved by millions of women. That secret was buried beneath layers of success, and Maggie told herself it was the price she had to pay for the life she has now. But everything changed on a fateful Tuesday morning when her personal assistant, Clara, a vibrant young woman with round-framed glasses, entered her office with a worried look. "Mrs. Reynolds, you need to see this right away," Clara said, her voice trembling, handing Maggie a plain brown envelope with no sender's name. Scribbled on it in messy handwriting was, "Mom, we need to talk." Maggie's heart skipped a beat. With slightly trembling hands, she tore it open, and inside was an old photo, Maggie at 22, in a hospital gown, holding a newborn with big round eyes. On the back, written in ink, 1985, Brooklyn. Maggie stared at the photo, her breathing growing heavy. Someone knew her secret. Someone had found her after all these years. But who? And why now, when she'd built an empire and thought the past was forever forgotten? She picked up the phone and called Ellen, her voice hoarse. "I need you to come over right away. Something big's happened." Ellen arrived at Maggie's penthouse that evening, bringing a bottle of white wine she knew Maggie liked and a tin of homemade cookies, a habit from their days as college roommates. Ellen, with her dyed blonde curls and plump figure, always brought warmth, but she wasn't afraid to speak her mind when needed. She settled into a plush leather armchair, watching Maggie pace nervously by the window, an unusual sight. "Come on, Maggie, sit down and tell me what's going on," Ellen said, her tone both gentle and commanding. Maggie handed her the photo, her hand still shaking slightly. "Look at this. Someone sent it to my office this morning." Ellen took the photo, frowning as she examined it. "This is you, isn't it? So young. And this baby." She hesitated, looking up at Maggie. "Maggie, don't tell me this is." Maggie snatched the photo back, her voice sharp. "Don't say it. I don't want to hear it." But Ellen wasn't one to let things slide. "Maggie Reynolds, I've known you for over 30 years. You can't keep hiding from me forever. This is your child, isn't it? The baby you never told anyone about." Maggie sank onto the sofa, cradling her head in her hands. She began to speak, her voice slow, as if each word were a heavy stone lifted from her heart. She told Ellen about Paul, the charming but aimless boy who left when she needed him most. She spoke of the months she hid her pregnancy under oversized clothes, the nights she cried alone in a shabby apartment, and the day she gave birth, seeing her baby for the last time before signing away her parental rights. "I didn't have a choice, Ellen," Maggie said, her eyes red. "I couldn't raise her. I didn't want her to grow up poor like I did. I wanted her to have a better life." Ellen placed a hand on Maggie's shoulder, her voice soft. "You did what you thought was right back then. But what now? Who sent this photo? And what do they want?" Maggie shook her head. "I don't know. It could be a scam. I'm a millionaire. Who wouldn't want to extort me?" But deep down, she knew the photo was too real. The baby's eyes, the tiny cloth bracelet she'd embroidered with an M as a final goodbye. That night, Maggie couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring out at the dark expanse of Central Park, her mind spinning. She'd built an entire life to forget the past, but now it was back, shattering the perfect shell she'd so carefully constructed. Her phone buzzed on the table, a text from an unknown number. "Mom, I don't want to scare you, but I need to meet you. Please call back." Maggie stared at the screen, her hand hovering over the call button. She told herself it might be a mistake, but her heart, frozen for so many years, began to crack. The next morning, as Maggie sat in her office with a cold cup of coffee in her hand, her phone rang again. Another unknown number. She took a deep breath and answered. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman, about 40 years old, soft yet resolute. "I'm Anna. I think you know who I am." Maggie felt the blood drain from her face. She stammered, "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't call me again." She hung up, her heart pounding. But less than a minute later, the phone rang again. This time, Anna said, "I have a son, Mom. Your grandson. He's sick, and I need your help." Maggie sat frozen, clutching the phone tightly. A grandson? She'd never considered that possibility. She turned off the phone, but her mind was spinning. Clara, who had overheard the call from her desk outside, stepped in with a worried look. "Mrs. Reynolds, is something wrong? You don't look well." Maggie, still maintaining her tough exterior, replied, "Clara, I need you to hire a private investigator. Find out about this woman, Anna. I want to know who she is and what she wants." Clara nodded and left immediately. While waiting, Maggie received a text from Anna, a photo of a frail 5-year-old boy lying in bed with an oxygen tube. "This is Tommy," the message read. "He needs you." Maggie stared at the photo. The boy's eyes were identical to those of the child she'd given up, big and clear, but now clouded by illness. She deleted the message, but the image haunted her. She wondered, could this be real? Or was it just an elaborate scam targeting her wealth? 2 days later, private investigator Frank, a weathered middle-aged man with a gravelly voice, met Maggie at her office. He placed a file on her desk. Anna Carter, 40, lives in Albany. Single mother, works part-time at a grocery store. Adoption records show she was adopted from a Brooklyn hospital in 1985. Matches the time you gave birth. Maggie flipped through the pages, her hands trembling. Frank continued. The boy, Tommy, 5 years old, has a congenital heart condition. Needs urgent surgery, but Anna can't afford it. Maggie looked up, her voice cold. She could be lying. Frank shrugged. Maybe, but I found this in the records. He handed her a copy of an old birth certificate, clearly stating, Mother, Margaret Reynolds. Maggie sat silently in her office, gripping the birth certificate copy Frank had given her. Her name, Margaret Reynolds, was printed plainly under Mother, the faded typewriter ink from the 80s cutting through the perfect shell she'd built over 40 years. She looked at Frank, trying to keep her voice steady. How did she get this? Adoption records are supposed to be sealed, aren't they? Frank shrugged, his tone even. Could be someone at the hospital kept a copy. Or Anna found it when her adoptive mother passed. I'm not sure, but the document's real, Mrs. Reynolds. Maggie felt the room spin. She told Frank to leave, then locked her office door, not wanting Clara or anyone else to see her like this. She sank into the large leather chair behind her desk, hands cradling her head. The image of Tommy, the frail boy with the oxygen tube, flashed in her mind, mingling with memories of the newborn she'd once held. She told herself, this could be a trap. Someone wants my money. I can't let emotions take over. But deep down, she knew the truth was unraveling, and she couldn't keep running from it. That night, Maggie called Ellen to the penthouse again. When Ellen arrived, carrying the scent of freshly baked cookies and her familiar warmth. She immediately noticed Maggie's strained expression. "You haven't slept again, have you?" Ellen said, setting the cookie tin on the table and settling onto the sofa. Maggie handed her the birth certificate without a word. Ellen read it, then sighed. "Good Lord, Maggie. This girl really is your daughter. And that boy, he's your grandson. What are you going to do now?" Maggie stood, pacing by the window. "I don't know, Ellen. I don't want to believe it. But if it's true, what do I do? Meet her? Give her money? Or pretend this never happened?" Ellen looked at Maggie with sharp yet gentle eyes. "Maggie, I know you're scared. You've been running from your past your whole life. But if that boy is really sick, and you can help, will you forgive yourself if you turn away? You couldn't keep your daughter back then, but now you have a chance to do right by your grandson." Maggie spun around, her voice harsh. "I don't owe anyone anything. I gave her a better life by letting her go." But Ellen didn't flinch. "You don't owe anyone, sure, but you owe yourself a chance to heal." Ellen's words echoed in Maggie's mind all night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not the restrained tears of the day she gave up her child, but deep, wrenching sobs. She dreamed of the newborn from long ago, but this time, the baby turned into Tommy, looking at her with pleading eyes. When she woke, drenched in sweat, Maggie made a decision. She would meet Anna, not out of sentiment, but reason. She needed to see for herself, to know for certain. She texted Anna back, "I'll come to Albany tomorrow. Don't expect much." The next morning, Maggie drove her black Mercedes to Albany, a 2-hour trip that felt like a lifetime. She turned on the radio to calm her mind, but Frank Sinatra's old songs only reminded her of the tough days in Brooklyn when she dreamed of a bigger life. Arriving in Albany, she found the small house Frank had described, a weathered wooden home on the outskirts, with peeling paint and a tiny garden overrun with weeds. Maggie parked, took a deep breath, and stepped onto the porch. Anna opened the door as soon as Maggie knocked. She looked eerily like Maggie, lightly curled hair now streaked with gray, sharp blue eyes, and a faint, wounded smile, a younger version of herself. Anna wore a baggy sweater and faded jeans, simple yet visibly exhausted. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Maggie nodded and stepped inside. The house was clean but worn, old furniture, stained walls, and the faint smell of cheap coffee lingering in the air. On the sofa lay Tommy, small and frail, an oxygen tube connected to his nose. He opened his eyes at the sound of footsteps, looking at Maggie with curiosity. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice soft but clear. Maggie froze, unsure how to respond. She turned to Anna. "You said he's sick. I want to hear the whole story." Anna nodded, gesturing for Maggie to sit at the small kitchen table, and began to speak. Anna had grown up in an adoptive family in Albany, an older, kind-hearted but poor couple. She always knew she was adopted but didn't care much until her adoptive mother passed away last year. While sorting through belongings, Anna found an old box containing a birth certificate and a tiny cloth bracelet embroidered with an M. From there, she started searching, and through a friend who worked at the old hospital, she traced Maggie. "I didn't want to bother you," Anna said, her eyes welling up. "But Tommy's had a heart condition since birth. I've tried everything, but insurance isn't enough, and the doctors say surgery is his only chance." Maggie looked at Tommy, her heart tightening. He looked just like Anna as a baby, like the child she'd given up. But she kept her cold exterior. "I need time to think," she said, standing. Anna grabbed her hand, pleading, "I don't want your money. I just want Tommy to live." Maggie pulled away, hurrying to her car without looking back. On the drive back to New York, she couldn't stop thinking about Tommy's eyes, clear, innocent, yet so fragile. She asked herself, "Can I turn my back again?" A week passed since the Albany trip, and Maggie tried to return to her routine, board meetings, approving new Reynolds beauty ad campaigns, and sipping wine by the window each night. But it all felt meaningless. The image of Tommy on the sofa with his oxygen tube haunted her, blending with memories of the day she gave up Anna. She told herself, "I'm not a mother. I don't know how to be one. I can't let this ruin my life." Then, on Friday night, a text from Anna arrived. "Tommy's just been admitted to the hospital. It's bad. I don't know what to do." Maggie didn't think twice. She grabbed her keys, rushed out, and drove to Albany in the dark. At the hospital, She found Anna sobbing outside the ICU. Through the glass, Maggie saw Tommy lying unconscious, surrounded by machines, the steady beeping a fragile echo of life. Anna looked up, her eyes red. The doctors say if he doesn't get surgery within 48 hours, he won't make it. Maggie stood there, feeling her world collapse. Everything she'd built, her career, her reputation, her control, vanished in this moment. She turned to Anna. I'll pay for the surgery, but I need to be sure. What proof do you have that you're my daughter? Anna rummaged through her bag, pulling out the tiny cloth bracelet with the embroidered M, the only thing Maggie had left with her child that day. This is what you left me, Anna said, her voice breaking. I don't need you to acknowledge me, but Tommy needs you. Maggie took the bracelet, tears spilling after years of restraint. She sank into a chair, covering her face as she wept. It wasn't the cry of a powerful CEO, but of a mother who'd lost too much. She couldn't deny it anymore. Anna was her daughter, and Tommy was her grandson. She picked up the phone, calling her lawyer and bank that night, arranging everything to save Tommy. But a bigger question loomed in her heart. Could she mend the mistakes of her past, or was it too late to become the mother and grandmother she'd never dared to imagine? Maggie stood in the Albany hospital hallway, still clutching the tiny cloth bracelet embroidered with an M. Her sobs had stopped, but tears continued to fall silently, soaking cheeks meticulously cared for with the high-end cosmetics of her own company. Anna sat beside her, quiet, not daring to break the moment. Maggie peered through the glass into the ICU, where Tommy lay motionless, pitifully small amid a tangle of wires and machines. A doctor emerged, a stern-faced middle-aged woman, and addressed Anna. We've stabilized the boy for now, but the surgery must happen tomorrow, or, she trailed off, but Maggie understood the unspoken implication. She turned to Anna, her voice hoarse but resolute. I've called the bank. The money will be transferred by morning. You don't need to worry anymore. Anna looked up, her red-rimmed eyes glinting with hope. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Maggie nodded, though her gaze remained distant. She wasn't doing this out of simple kindness. It stemmed from a deep, unnamed pain, a guilt she couldn't fully articulate. She'd abandoned Anna 40 years ago, and now, faced with the possibility of losing Tommy, she couldn't bear another abandonment. That night, Maggie didn't return to New York. She booked a hotel room near the hospital but couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring out at Albany's dark streets, holding a glass of wine she'd brought from her car. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ellen. You okay? I'm worried, Maggie replied. I don't know who I am anymore, Ellen, but I'm trying to do the right thing. Ellen responded instantly. You're stronger than you think. Don't be afraid of your feelings. The next morning, Maggie arrived at the hospital early, meeting the surgeon and signing the necessary paperwork. As Tommy was wheeled into the operating room, Anna grabbed Maggie's hand, the first time since they'd met. Thank you, Mom, she whispered, her voice choked. The word Mom rang like a bell in Maggie's mind, awakening something long dormant. She didn't reply, just squeezed Anna's hand tightly, and they stood there, waiting in silence as Tommy's fate rested with the doctors. But then, an unexpected twist unfolded. Mid-surgery, the lead surgeon emerged, her face tense. We've found a complication. There's a small tumor in the boy's heart, undetectable in prior x-rays. We need family consent to expand the procedure, but the risks will be much higher. Anna panicked, turning to Maggie. Mom, what do we do? Maggie felt the world tilt. She was the only one who could decide, and if Tommy didn't make it, she'd never forgive herself. Standing before the doctor, Maggie's mind reeled. She asked, her voice trembling, if you don't operate further, what happens to him? The doctor sighed. The tumor will grow and become dangerous later. But if we operate now, given his weak state, his survival odds are about 50%. Anna buried her face in her hands, sobbing, while Maggie felt trapped in a dark corner with no escape. She glanced through the glass at Tommy's tiny form on the operating table and, for the first time in her life, prayed, not to anyone specific, but to her own heart, begging for a chance to make things right. I consent, Maggie said, her voice firm though her heart was breaking. Do everything you can. The doctor nodded and returned to the operating room, leaving Maggie and Anna in the cold hallway. Anna clung to Maggie, sobbing. If Tommy doesn't make it, I don't know how I'll go on. Maggie, and used to physical closeness, hugged her back and whispered, "We'll get through it together." For the first time, she felt the meaning of family, not through wealth or status, but through shared pain and hope. 5 hours passed like a century. Maggie and Anna sat side by side, silent, holding hands tightly. Finally, the doctor emerged, sweat beading on her forehead. "We removed the tumor," she said. "The boy's very weak, but he's past the critical stage. Now we wait for him to recover." Anna cried out in relief, throwing her arms around Maggie. Maggie managed a faint smile, a mix of relief and lingering fear flooding her chest. Tommy had survived, but could she step into his and Anna's lives without breaking everything again? The next day, when Tommy woke, Maggie entered his room. He looked at her, offering a weak smile. "Are you my angel?" Maggie laughed, tears streaming down her face. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone trying to do the right thing." She sat by his bedside, spinning an impromptu tale about the birds in Central Park, while Anna watched from the doorway, her eyes full of love. But Maggie knew the journey wasn't over. She still had to face herself and the years she'd lost. Maggie stayed in Albany for a few more days, not because she wanted to, but because she felt she needed to be there. Tommy recovered slowly but steadily, growing a little stronger each day, and his smile melted Maggie's heart. Anna cared for him devotedly, but she also began opening up to Maggie, sharing stories of her life, the tough years as a single mother, the sleepless nights when Tommy fell ill, and the small dreams she'd never dared pursue. Maggie listened, realizing Anna was far stronger than she'd ever been, despite lacking wealth or power. One afternoon, while Tommy napped, Maggie and Anna sat in the hospital hallway with cups of vending machine coffee. Anna asked, "Why did you give me up?" The question struck like a knife, but Maggie didn't flinch. She told her everything: the fear of pregnancy, the desperation of being abandoned, and the decision to let Anna go so they both might have a better life. "I wasn't as strong as you think," Maggie said, her voice catching. "I took the easier path for myself, and I've lived with that regret my whole life." Anna stayed quiet for a moment, then took Maggie's hand. "I don't blame you. I just wanted to understand. And now, I just want you here, with me and Tommy." Maggie nodded, tears streaming down her face. She realized that while the past couldn't be changed, the future was still hers to shape. Back in New York, Maggie began rearranging her life. She scaled back at Reynolds Beauty, delegating most responsibilities to her management team, and planned to spend more time in Albany. But another secret unexpectedly surfaced. Clara, Maggie's assistant, called. "Mrs. Reynolds, I found an old letter in the company archives. It's from a man named Paul, sent 20 years ago. He says he's the father of your daughter and wants to get in touch." Maggie was stunned. Paul, the man who'd abandoned her 40 years ago, where was he now? And did he know about Anna and Tommy? Maggie sat in her Reynolds Beauty office, holding the letter Clara had faxed from the archives. It was handwritten, the scrawl unmistakably Paul's, the man who'd left her 40 years earlier when she was pregnant with Anna. Dated 20 years ago, it was addressed to the company's old Brooklyn location when Reynolds Beauty was just a small shop. The message was brief but shook Maggie to her core. "Maggie, I know I was wrong to leave. I heard you had a child, our child. I want to meet her, to do the right thing. Contact me." Below was a faded phone number, no longer in service. A surge of anger mixed with old pain flared within Maggie. Paul hadn't sought her out when she needed him most, and now, after all these years, what did he want? She summoned Clara, her voice icy. "Find out about this, Paul. I want to know where he is and if he really knows about Anna." Clara nodded and left immediately. Maggie sat back, gazing out her office window at New York's towering skyscrapers. She wondered, if Paul shows up now, will he ruin what I'm building with Anna and Tommy? While waiting, Maggie drove back to Albany that weekend. Tommy had been discharged, and for the first time, she saw him running around the small yard in front of Anna's house, weak but full of life. Anna stood nearby, smiling as Maggie stepped out of the car with a bag of gifts, picture books for Tommy and a soft cashmere sweater for Anna. "You didn't have to," Anna said, but Maggie shook her head. "I wanted to. I've missed too much already." The three sat in the kitchen, eating a simple dinner Anna had cooked, pasta with homemade tomato sauce. Tommy told Maggie about his dream of becoming an astronaut, and she laughed heartily, feeling her heart lighten for the first time in years. But when Tommy went to bed, Anna looked at Maggie with serious eyes. "Mom, I want you to know I don't need anyone else in my life or Tommy's. If you want to be here, that's enough." Maggie nodded but didn't mention Paul's letter. She didn't want to worry Anna, not yet. A few days later, Clara called back. "I found Paul," she said. "Paul Grayson, 64, lives in New Jersey. Works as a mechanic, divorced twice, no other kids. He sent a few more letters over the years, but no one replied because the company moved." Maggie was silent for a moment, then said, "Don't contact him. I'll handle it." She didn't know what she wanted from Paul, forgiveness, an explanation, or just closure. But one thing was clear, Anna and Tommy were her priority now. Maggie decided to confront Paul, not for his sake, but for her own. One crisp autumn morning, she drove to New Jersey, to a small garage on the outskirts where Paul worked. As she stepped inside, the smell of motor oil and the clanging of metal filled the air. Paul stood there, gray-haired, gaunt, wearing oil-stained overalls. He looked at Maggie, eyes widening. "Maggie? Is that really you?" She nodded, her voice icy. "I got your letter. Why didn't you look for me sooner?" Paul bowed his head, his voice raspy. "I tried, Maggie. When I heard you'd made it big with the cosmetics company, I wrote, but no one answered. I thought you didn't want to see me." He explained that after leaving her, he'd lived a messy life. Alcohol, failure, regret. "I found out about our daughter through a friend in Brooklyn," he said. "I wanted to meet her, but I don't deserve it." Maggie looked at him, no longer angry, just empty. "You're right," she said. "You don't deserve it. But Anna and my grandson are doing fine. I'm not here to forgive you. I'm here to tell you you're no longer part of our lives." Paul nodded, his eyes welling up, but he didn't argue. Maggie turned and walked back to her car, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. On the drive back, she stopped at a small shop, bought a bouquet of daisies, Anna's favorite, and headed straight to Albany. When she arrived, she found Anna and Tommy planting in the garden. Tommy ran to hug her, shouting, "Grandma Maggie, tell me another astronaut story." Maggie laughed, sitting on the grass with him, spinning a new tale while Anna watched with grateful eyes. That night, Maggie stayed at Anna's house for the first time. She lay on the sofa, listening to Tommy's steady breathing from the next room, and felt at peace. She was no longer the cold CEO of Reynolds Beauty. She was a mother, a grandmother, and for the first time, she felt she belonged somewhere. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ellen. "Proud of you, Maggie. Welcome home." Maggie smiled, turned off the phone, and closed her eyes. That winter, Maggie hosted her first Christmas with Anna and Tommy at her New York penthouse. She decorated the apartment with a towering tree, twinkling lights, and colorful gift boxes, something she'd never done just for herself. Tommy raced around the room, laughing as he unwrapped his first present, a custom-made spaceship model Maggie had ordered. Anna sat beside Maggie on the sofa, whispering, "I never thought I'd have a Christmas like this." "Thank you, Mom." Maggie squeezed Anna's hand, saying nothing, just smiling. Reynolds Beauty continued to thrive, but Maggie was no longer its center. She handed most of the work to a younger team, splitting her time between New York and Albany. She began writing a memoir, not about business success, but about her journey to reclaim her family, hoping to inspire women like her, those who once thought the past couldn't be healed. One snowy evening, as thick flakes fell outside the penthouse, Maggie sat by the window with a glass of wine, gazing at a blanketed Central Park. Tommy ran over, hugging her legs. "Grandma Maggie, tell me about astronauts on Mars." She laughed, lifting him onto her lap, and started the story. Anna joined them, carrying a plate of homemade cookies, a recipe learned from Ellen. The three sat together, laughing and talking, and for the first time, Maggie felt her life was whole. The story ends with Maggie staring out the window, reflecting on the mistakes, the pain, and the miracles that brought her here. She was no longer the cold millionaire CEO, but a woman who'd found life's true meaning, not in wealth or fame, but in the love of a family she once thought she'd lost forever.